Evbo, the guy who made Parkour Civilization. If you don't know who he is, Evbo is a rising YouTuber who creates Minecraft roleplay content and sometimes participates in Minecraft events every so often. In this video, I'll be talking more on his Minecraft roleplay content. I'm a fan of Evbo. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy his content a ton. However, there are a few things I would like to discuss within the video that could be further developed upon. I'm not exactly the most qualified person to write or talk about something like this, but I wanted to put my 2 cents in, as I do love Evbo's content and would love to see him grow as a writer. These are things that I, personally, as a viewer, would like to be more expounded upon. On screen should be the topics or stuff or whatever that I'm going to be talking about. This is also for my oomfs. Hi oomfs, I'm here talking about whatever. Anyways, so the first one up is character interaction. When it comes to character interaction, I would have to say that Evbo does a pretty decent job at creating a string of dialogue. That is to say, if the dialogue is written in for plot reasons. Evbo writes in a more plot-driven way, so his way of writing is more of a plot-driven narrative, which are more concerned with how the character does in each situation, rather than how they feel and how it affected them internally. I would have to say that Evbo has actually been tinkering around with the emotional part of his stories, especially seeing like how he started doing it in PvP Civilization's finale, and I think he's going in a proper direction, a good direction, because like it's just really good that he's experimenting on different things. I would say that, we already went through that. It's still a very good start to bringing the character-driven narrative, so yeah. Evbo's narratives usually fail at character interaction. When two characters in the narrative talk to one another, it is usually to push the plot forward. Evbo is more often than not using one-off characters to tell things to the main character, Evbo, and none of them truly stick around too long to be relevant, and I think that's a bit of a problem when it comes to writing, to Evbo's writing, because he's more used to having one-off characters to push the plot forward, whereas in his newer videos, he's starting to experiment more and start to build on characters themselves, having them be characters rather than just plot points. So I think he needs to focus more on trying to get these people into being people rather than just anchors into Evbo's character. I would say that that was the case until like Parkour Civilization, where people began to grow more attached to the side characters, such as Siwat, who I would say has one of the biggest impacts as to why the series became so popular. It's between Siwat and Evbo's character interactions that people began to love Evbo's content. Siwat, I would say, is one of Evbo's better written characters, despite the holes that may be peeking through his shell. He's a character who can push the plot around. Plus, he's a character that has an interaction outside of Evbo. So it's no shocker that he became one of the most popular characters, and if not, one of the only characters that even had a name at the time during Parkour Civilization's release. Even in the second season of Parkour Civilization, he was given a purpose, a backstory, and a motive, which are all very important to a character. I feel like Evbo was going in the right direction for Siwat, especially Siwat. But unfortunately, outside of Siwat, however, many of Evbo's characters don't seem to have a proper interaction with one another outside of talking about Evbo, and this stems a huge problem when it comes to writing a world. When writing, you want to have your characters feel alive, you want them to act naturally as possible. Although there are some people who, depending on their writing style, want the characters to feel more fake, I guess. But yeah, I feel like with Evbo's writing, I think he's trying to lean more into realism bit by bit to like give his characters some more depth to them. An example I could give out would be Tabby and Julie. By Perimeter, these two characters have met and have probably talked to one another off screen. Sorry, I have a dog barking in the background. However, these two do not seem to have a relationship outside of talking about Evbo or anything that concerns the stability of the civilization. Sorry. I would have to estimate that these two have known each other for at least a minimum of a few months, and not once have these two interacted outside of quote unquote work. I wouldn't believe it if they said that they don't have a relationship outside of work. Because if you are around a classmate, I feel like you would have ended up talking to them at least once. And that's like outside of like schoolwork and stuff. But that may not be like a proper argument to that. There's actually something outside of these two about these two that not interacting with one another in a setting outside of Evbo or work, and that's the Bechdel test. I can tell that Evbo has been experimenting on different things in his videos lately, especially in his newest one. At the time of writing this, PV Parkour Civ, episode 2. This is the first time that he's had not one, not two, but 3 women in the same episode. Holy shit, no way! That's crazy. Sorry for cursing, but yeah. This is a huge step in the right direction, as in most of his videos, the most you can get is 1 woman, and it's usually Tabby. I do love Tabby, but there's something about having only 1 woman in his videos that makes it feel very isolating. Although Evbo has been able to get 3 women in 1 episode, there's still this lingering problem. They don't interact with one another. I get that there's not enough screen time for all of them to interact, but I don't think that's a good excuse not to have them, talk to one another. Especially in a situation where they could be talking about like Evbo or like how they're handling the situation of having their own teammates disappear, and then like the group of Jumper and like Evbo and EMF, like that could also be another way of them like talking to one another, but no, it's only just Tabby and Evbo talking about it. So like both Jumper and EMF don't really have that much of a significance in terms of the plot right now. And I do hope that Evbo does like talk about it a little bit more in the next episode. So like the girls are basically just there to keep the plot moving, with Tabby always being the person who asks the questions, especially about Evbo, Julie to divert the conversation back to the plot, and Jumper who introduces the new form of jumping called experimental jumping. Although right now, it's not that significant. I do hope that he expounds upon it some more, not just like as a one-off thing. I know he's got something in mind, because like there's no way he wouldn't just like show off the new experimental jumping and not do something about it. And that's all fine and dandy in characters to push the plot forward, but if all the character will do is just that and only that, it becomes a bit of an issue. It makes the characters a little bland and boring. And yeah, with the girls not really being interested in talking with one another, with the girls not being interested in talking with one another in Evbo's PB Parkour Sim video, it unfortunately fails the Bechdel test. I do hope that his next episode has them more talking to one another, because I feel like it's very important. It's very important for them to talk to one another and like feel like characters, because characters are not just hey hi kind of thing, But it's not that big of a deal when it comes to writing. But this is a common pitfall that a lot of writers fall into when writing a story with several women. I'd like to suggest that Evbo take a few steps back in writing and think a little bit more about how these 2 characters could interact with one another. This would at least solidify that these 2 characters have a relationship with one another outside of talking about Evbo. Speaking of character, I want to go back on my point about characters becoming bland and boring, and that leads me to my next topic, which is flat characterization. Flat characterization is a lot more common in Evbo's writing than it seems. At first glance, the characters seem to be a bit more than what meets the eye. However, the longer they stay on screen, the less interesting they become. They are what is put in front of you, basically. It's like what I said with Evbo having one-off characters a lot during his first few videos, especially like his older videos. Most of his characters are one-off, so like there's no need for them to be character driven or given any plot relevance. Unlike now, here in his PV Parkour, PvP Civ, and PvP Parkour Civilization, um, a lot of the characters are more of people. They become more important to the plot, which means that they should have some semblance of character. An example of what I'm talking about is Minitek. During his first appearance, he almost seemed like an very important figure along with the Diamond Swords, training Evbo to become a better fighter and giving out advice. However, the more screen time he was given, the less interesting he became as a character. His dialogue only served to push the plot forward. He, along with many other characters, some I could name but would take up a large amount of time, fall into the category of flat character. Minitek, I first thought, would play a more important role in the series. And I do hope that all of the Diamond Swords during PV Parkour Civ do play a more important role than just saying things to Evbo like, oh, Evbo, there's this guy coming through, like the gates and stuff. And then like Evbo has to do all the work himself. I want the characters to do more, to be more than just like a messenger of something that's going to happen. I need them to like move. I need them to become an actual person rather than just something that pushes the plot forward. Because if you are an Evbo or an antagonist, your character falls flat into becoming a plot device rather than characters. It's a shame that characters such as the Diamond Swords or the other civilizations aren't given as much importance to a story that revolves around political relations. I get that it's probably not Ebbo's strong suit. However, I think that his story writing could benefit from learning to balance the characters both as plot devices and characters of their own. As writers, it is our duty to research more on our ideas. If we can't research, if we can't find information about the things that we are writing, then we can't serve to make a good plot to serve to the people. Let's say, for example, Wembu is trying to talk to Julie about something related to the Bo civilization and how they're trying to garner more than they're willing to give to the Diamond Swords. To the Diamond Swords, yeah. Wembu tells Julie this, and instead of telling the others immediately, we could have a bit more of a back and forth talk between Wembu and Julie. They could be talking about whetting their swords and preparing for battle, or Wembu is telling Julie this, and while they're doing that, they are in the middle of sparring rather than just standing still. It gives them a bit of character in the little things that they do, and it gives them like you can sort of peek into how their relationship is like in outside of the videos. Okay, I think that's it for like what I want to say for flat characterizations, but that's basically, yeah. Next up is content boundaries. When PvP Civ was just starting out, Evbo had been experimenting with the whole Tabby being his girlfriend thing, something people like Joel often jokes about in his videos. However, because of how different their fan bases are, it wasn't taken as well as it would have been in a Joel and Kong video, where it's practically a norm to shout a joke like that at least once. Evbo is unable to experiment with his content without receiving any backlash from it. I'd say he could honestly use his second channel to experiment on different writing styles without needing it to be a series. I feel like that's something that Evbo is like a little hesitant on, especially with like how he posted both Civilization and he wanted that to be a one-off series. But because of how his newer fans are like asking it to become more of a series rather than a one-off, I feel like he has a bit of a pressure that comes with it, because now the people want to see more of that, of that episode rather than it just being a one off thing. And to be fair, that one off was kind of like, it kind of went off in a, it cut off in a, what's it called? In a weird way, you know? And like, if he wants to do one offs, I feel like he could use his second channel to like make or experiment on his series or his videos a little more. And that way people can expect more uploads with less pressure, as well as to see where things could go in with the audience without it being a full-blown series, because not everything has to be a banger or, you know. Okay, this is suggestions. Um this isn't just for Evbo, but for those who also need help to become a better writer. What I suggest people do is that they should read and write more. And I know that's cliche, but it does help you become a better writer the more you read and the more you write, as this is something that stimulates the brain into writing something better than the last. It's kind of like drawing, where you imitate something that has already been done before, and after time, you start to get even better than you had been before. Reading different various genres of literature can help you broaden your writing style and skills. Don't be afraid to experiment with your writing style. Keeping up with writing exercises can also help boost your skill as a writer. Even asking peers to do a peer review could also help. I think that last one is very helpful because it can tell you where exactly your weak points are, and you can fix it immediately rather than asking, like, let's say ChatGPT or something, because people are better at finding different weak points, whereas AI, feeds from those weak points. In conclusion, Evbo has the potential of making great writing. He's made some pretty interesting plot points, and you can tell he puts his heart into what he does. He still has plenty of room to grow as a writer, and I have faith that he'll be able to serve wonderful stories in the future. Thank you.